Last night was the last slate of games before the All-Star break in the NBA, and we actually got a pretty fun matchup between OKC and the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was a pretty fascinating game plan, and the way the game ended up going was pretty interesting, so I decided to do a film breakdown on it. I will leave a timestamp right here if you want to skip to just the film breakdown, but before we get into the film, I do want to talk about both of these teams and just talk about this game overall before we get into some specifics with the plays. Just so you guys know, the breakdown is going to be pretty Minnesota skewed. It's just of the second half, and the second half was really all Minnesota for a lot of it. OKC did go on a little bit of a run to start the half, but we're going to show how Minnesota was able to score on the best defense in the league and one of the best defenses of the last decade. We're also going to show how they were able to hold SGA, who is having one of the best guard seasons of all time. He is probably the best scorer in the NBA right now and might win MVP. How did they hold him to 6 of 21 from the field? That's really what the film breakdown is. So before we get into that, let's just talk a little bit about these teams and about this game. So we'll start with Minnesota, missing a couple of key guys right now. Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, DiVincenzo, all out with injury. Did not play in this game, and I think obviously no team ever wants injuries, but one of the positives that you get when you have key guys like that missing is you get to see what you have on your bench. You get to explore your depth, and you get to give guys opportunities who usually don't get them. So Rob Dillingham getting opportunities. Jalen Clark, who got the start last night, had the defensive assignment of guarding Shea to start the game. He's had a really good stretch here, especially defensively. He looks like he might be a player. But last night, the big impact guy off the bench that usually doesn't get the opportunity was Terrence Shannon Jr. as well as Luka Garza. But we'll start with Terrence Shannon Jr. Just had a really big impact on this game with his athleticism, his effort, and the thing that sticks out to me, he's a 22-year-old rookie. He is confident, man. He is ready to play. He had a play last night, shot clock winding down, ball winds up in his hands. There's some chaos going on around him. He almost loses it, gathers it, gets a little like lefty dribble, little euro, right foot, right arm, hook at the shot clock buzzer, puts it in. He looks like a ready to go guy, and that's what we thought of him when he was drafted, but he just hasn't been able to get the opportunities this year because obviously Minnesota has so much talent across the board. Let's talk about Minnesota's defense a little bit. In the first half, they really tilted everything towards Shea, and they played really good individual defense in terms of keeping him in front, but they also played really good team defense in terms of keeping him out of the paint, keeping him away from the rim, and whenever he went up for a shot, just crowds of guys, bodies around Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, got blocked a couple of times, and just was shooting over tough contests all night. Like I said, Jalen Clark started on him. He had a couple possessions where he did well, but I don't think Jalen Clark and that shorter, stocky, strong, quick, athletic guy, that's not exactly the best matchup that you want for Shea. I think Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Terrence Shannon ended up being the better matchups on the Minnesota side. So first half, that was kind of the game plan, was just keep him out of the paint, play really good individual defense, and it worked. He had a really tough shooting half in the first half, but then second half they mix it up a little bit, and I thought this was really interesting because the first half game plan was working, but they switched and they went to a more blitzing and doubling scheme and just getting the ball out of Shea's hands more in the second half and daring other guys to beat them. Now, I think OKC actually had a pretty similar game plan against Anthony Edwards, and for Ant, I mean, he got the ball out of his hands, and he had guys, role players, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, Terrence Shannon, step up, create shots, hit tough shots. Nickeil Alexander-Walker hit big shots. Everyone on Minnesota just looked confident in their shot and themselves, and specifically McDaniels and Naz Reid just had really, really impressive shot-creating nights. For OKC, I do think, looking at this type of game and this type of game plan by Minnesota, I've mentioned it when they played Milwaukee in the NBA Cup. This is the plan against OKC. You do everything you can to keep Shea outside the paint. Force him to take those tough middies. He's going to make a couple. He made a couple last night. But for the most part, force him to take tough shots and get the ball out of his hands and dare the OKC shooters and perimeter players to beat you with shooting. And that was the game plan last night, and the OKC shooters did not capitalize. It's kind of a cascading effect with these OKC shooters, which is something that I want to talk about a little bit, right? So sometimes they start off, Shea's, dominating whatever his matchup is. He's getting into the paint. He's spraying out to shooters. They have wide open shots. They're hitting, wide open catch and shoots. Now they start to feel pretty comfortable, right? Now Shea's hunting shooters. Now he's giving them the ball when they're not even wide open, and they're taking and making these tougher shots. Well, now they're making tough shots. Now they have to be guarded differently. Now Shea can take over in isolation and in pick and roll, and now you're toast because everybody's in rhythm, everybody's feeling it, and you have Shea, who's one of the best players in the world. But the question for OKC is, how do they win when those first open shots don't go in, right? Usually it's defense. Usually OKC, regardless of how many shots they make, they can just get stops. They can get forced turnovers. They can get out in transition. They can win the hustle plays. They can win on the margins, and they can win ugly even when their offense isn't clicking. Last night, Nas and Jaden McDaniels made that really hard to win with defense. And also credit to Minnesota for only having, I think, 6 turnovers for the game, I think it was. And last time these two teams played, Minnesota had turnovers in the 20s. So if you can take care of the ball against OKC, and if you can force them to try and beat you with shooters, that is the game plan to try and beat them. And it paid off last night. Now, for OKC, that same game plan of forcing, role players and other guys to beat you other than Anthony Edwards, it didn't pay off. Those guys, all contributed. Garza, Shannon, Dillingham, all really good games. The other thing that was the story of this game really was 20 offensive rebounds for Minnesota to 12 for OKC, and Minnesota absolutely dominated in second chance points. I thought this was a really good showcase for Minnesota's just athleticism, their length, their hustle, their effort. And like I said, that's what you get when you play bench guys and young guys who don't get a ton of opportunity. They crash hard. Garza had 6 of these offensive rebounds. I mean, Luka Garza is a guy that I think people are really mixed on. There are a lot of fans of his. Obviously, he was a big star in college that think he should be getting more minutes. There are obviously other guys who think he stinks on defense and he's not good enough on offense and he just shouldn't be in the rotation ever. Last night was a really, really good step for him. I don't know if that's something that's going to continue, but he had a major, major impact on that game, mainly because of his offensive rebounding. Also, I thought had some decent possessions on defense just in terms of blitzing and recovering, stuff like that. But for OKC, they're obviously way better at rebounding this year than they were the last 2 years. That's been the struggle for them over the last 2 years since they've had Shea kind of emerging. And last night, maybe just a lack of focus, maybe a lack of effort where you're going into the All-Star break, you're, looking past the team, you're just looking forward to getting some rest. But also credit to Minnesota for winning on the margins, because usually when you talk about loose balls, you talk about diving on the floor, you talk about crashing the glass, OKC wins all those areas usually. It didn't happen last night. And I thought it was an interesting case study for Minnesota to really show that, yeah, OKC's probably the best defense. They're probably the most athletic team. But Minnesota's right there, man. They got a ton of length. They got a ton of athleticism and a ton of effort guys as well. So it was a really good win for Minnesota. Let's get into the film breakdown. We'll show you specifically how they were able to pull this one off. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, we made it to the film breakdown. We'll start early third here, 64-56 Minnesota. We'll see how Minnesota is able to fend off Oklahoma City in this second half. Let's start with this possession here. You see the pick and roll with Clark and Ant, and watch the perfect defense from Oklahoma City. Chet able to contain the ball, allow Shea to recover. You see Dort sagging off his man, taking the roller, Clark, and you see J-Dub now basically guarding 2. Perfect defense from OKC. That's what you expect. Then they recover. They switch back out there in perfect shape. Now watch. Ant drives. Shea cuts him off again. And now you have Jaden McDaniels with the ball in the corner. 12 on the shot clock. You have to feel good if you're Oklahoma City. You got the ball out of Ant Edwards' hands, and there's no advantage right now for the offense. But Jaden McDaniels just had himself a night, man. Little Euro step into the lane, floater over Shea, and 1. If you're going to get this type of shot creation out of Jaden McDaniels, the Wolves are going to be so tough to beat. They have so many defenders, obviously Anthony Edwards, so many athletes. And if they get guys like Nas Reed and Jaden McDaniels to step up as scorers, which they did last night, they are a completely different team. All right, again here, we got a pick and roll, and you see OKC just going to switch it. J-Dub takes the ball. Shea takes the roller. Now, you got another action, a secondary action with Nas Reed setting the screen for Jaden to come up. They switch that one, too. Again, if you're OKC, best defense in the league, super switchable. You've blown up the action now for Minnesota. There's no advantage created by the offense, but Jaden, again, just a little Euro into the lane, floater, gets it to go. He was an absolute monster last night, and if you're OKC, you just throw your hands up at that play. You did everything everything you could. All right, right here, Minnesota's going to blitz this ball screen, which they did a lot in the second half, but Naz Reid doesn't do a great job to cut off Shea's driving angle. He should probably be up here a little bit more, but then again, really hard to guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, as we know, right? So Shai basically gets around the double team, gets downhill, Ant has to come over and help. Easy lob, but keep an eye on this blitzing action from the Wolves because we're going to see a lot of it. Okay, right here, OKC again, going to play aggressive gap help here with Shai, sagging off a little bit with Naz. Jalen Williams, obviously an elite defender on Anthony Edwards. They're just trying to get the ball out of his hands, daring other guys to beat them, and watch what happens. You hit Naz Reid. You got to be happy if you're OKC. Naz Reid takes a little step back, kind of a deep three over the contest of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and he knocks it down. And OKC, again, you throw your hands up. You go, that's basically the shot that we want them taking, and we're going to live with that. And Naz says, okay, live with it. Live with this. Clip's a little cut off, but you can see the blitz. Naz Reid was guarding Hartenstein. He comes up and he blitzes Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Again, just trying to get the ball out of the best player's hand. And look I want to go back actually. Anthony Edwards, right? Anthony Edwards is guarding Chet, and watch Chet space out to the wing, but Ant doesn't even react for a second. He doesn't care. He's letting Chet go because he knows he has to take this roller. They're keeping OKC out of the paint. It leaves Chet open, but they're going to live with Chet and OKC's other, perimeter players and shooters taking late contested shots. You know what I mean? And they got away with it until OKC punishes this coverage. Minnesota's going to be fine with this shot, and OKC was never able to punish it last night. Check out Naz Reid on this play. Obviously, I mentioned he had a big game. Watch him here. J-Dub ball watching a little bit. Naz Reid sneaks behind him. J-Dub doesn't really see where he is. And now J-Dub sees him, but Naz is going to get a touch in the paint. Now it's one-on-one with J-Dub, who is an elite defender. But Naz Reid, man, really, really talented scorer. One of the more underrated scorers in the league. Just an incredible skill set at that size. A really talented guy. Naz had a big game last night. Nice jump hook there. Watch how Minnesota plays this ball screen. So, first of all, look how high it's set. So, Shai comes off of this, right? You have McDaniels chasing over, and you have Naz, who's just going to meet him above the three-point line. But look at this. Terrence Shannon Jr. down here. He's in the paint. He is not letting Shai get a clean drive to the rim. Now we have Na guarding Dort, and we leave Ant Edwards guarding Wiggins. And if Shai is going to make this kickout pass, we're going to rotate with Ant. We're going to slide over. We're going to recover, right? So if Shai wants to make that, that's fine. We can live with that. Or Shai's going to have to make a really tough pull-up midi over Naz's contest. We're not letting him get in the paint. We're not letting him get to the rim. And Shai can make that shot, but Minnesota did a really good job last night of making it tough on him. They did it there. All right, I thought this was crazy. Ant wasn't killing them, but we obviously know how talented of a player Anthony Edwards is. And look at the Thunder. They're like, you know what? Anybody else can take a shot. We are getting the ball out of your hands. We're doubling him before he even gets to half court. Makes the pass to Garza here. He makes the read, hits Na, who has a wide open catch and shoot three. He misses it, but long rebound. Look at OKC. They got three guys in the paint. This comes out, and Dort and Ant are in the backcourt. They're not even in the front court yet to get the rebound. So Minnesota gets the board, and it leads to a second chance opportunity off the chaos. This is another story of the game, was the offensive rebounding for Minnesota. This was obviously just a long rebound, but kind of a strange blitz there by OKC. I would love to know kind of the thought process behind that one. Okay, right here, not coming off the pick, gets to this little floater. Chet gets the contest. This is a tough shot. OKC living with this shot all day, but watch the crashers. You got Terrence Shannon Jr. and you have Luka Garza crashing full speed, and Shannon, an excellent, impressive athlete, goes up, gets this board, and now look, you got four guys surrounding him. Shai in the paint as well. Nobody to account for Anthony Edwards. Joe closes out, pump fake, one dribble, Ant knocks it down. Second chance points were huge for Minnesota. This was a nice little action the Wolves ran. Starts with a flare for Rob Dillingham, then you're going to flow into a ball screen, but keep an eye on Luka Garza, who's coming over simultaneously. As the ball screen happens, he's going to set a flare for Naz Reid, who was killing the Thunder all night. Wiggins knows Naz Reid is feeling it. Naturally, he takes a step out in his direction, leaves the cut open for Luka Garza. Rob whips it in there, and Luka Garza gets a deep catch, puts the moves on, finishes. Nice action there. This was a beautiful defensive possession by the Wolves. I wish we could show the whole thing, but it's a little cut off, so we'll just watch the last 7 seconds here. Watch what we got here. Hartenstein comes over. We're going to run a ball screen, blitz it right away. Hartenstein slips out Easy catch in the middle of the floor. Watch Kenrich Williams, who's going to cut here. I don't know why he's cutting. Just stay in the corner. You got a wide open three, but he decides to cut, kind of cuts right into Garza, takes him out of the play. Naz Reid now sinks down. Doesn't look like it's a super wide open passing lane for Isaiah Joe. Now you end up with the ball going out to Aaron Wiggins with 2 seconds on the shot clock. Shannon runs him off the line. You end up with a shot clock violation. Really good possession there by Minnesota. Wish we could have showed the whole thing. Okay, right here we got Isaiah Joe going to make a nice little backdoor cut here, but watch Naz Reid, who is guarding Kenrich, see it right away, slide over, try and cut off the drive. Garza guarding Hartenstein, he slides over and help. You make this a really tough shot on Isaiah Joe. This is kind of something that OKC might need to work on, is going up and challenging 2 guys when you should really be hunting for better shots with 10 on the shot clock. But regardless, Joe misses this. You come down with the rebound. We'll check out the fast break for Minnesota. You got the ball in Rob Dillingham's hands, a little crafty behind the back. 2 guys go to Naz Reid, little give and go right back to Dillingham, puts it up and in. All right, right here, watch the fight from Minnesota, and specifically Luka Garza. These are the plays that OKC usually wins on the margins. Rob Dillingham goes up, puts this floater up, but look at the position for Garza. Got a smaller man on him, gets the position, and comes down with the rebound. Now he goes up, gets blocked, maybe got fouled there. Jeez, looks like that's across the arm. But ball comes loose, ends up in Terrence Shannon Jr.'s hand. He loses it, and now Rob Dillingham comes up with the loose ball and puts this up and off the rim. And again, Garza's there, and the Thunder can't come down with the rebound. Obviously, it's always been a problem for the Thunder, but you usually see them win the hustle plays with those loose balls. Garza taps it in. He made a big impact on that game, man. Shout out Luka Garza. Another blitz here by Minnesota. Garza was guarding Chet. Ant was guarding J-Dub, and Garza now up in J-Dub's grill on the blitz. Now, who's the open man, right? You have 2 on the ball. The open man is Chet, and right now, he's wide open, right? But Garza in J-Dub's face, he can't make this pass. Right here, he wants to make the pass. He knows Chet's the open man, but Terrence Shannon Jr. is like, nope, we're not letting anything at the rim. You're going to have to pass it somewhere else. So you leave Lou Dort as the open man and watch Shannon recover, get a late contest. We're living with this shot until you make a stop, and Lou Dort bricks it. Okay, right here, it's the same exact thing, but the spacing for OKC is better. That last play, there was no guy in the corner. You had a guy on the wing, Lou Dort, and you had Chet, who was open in the paint. This time, they blitz Shea. Chet comes open, as he did last play. You get him the rock, and now Anthony Edwards has to step up, and it's an easy lob to J-Dub. We'll finish it off with Jaden McDaniels, who's just been on a tear lately. Ant trying to back down Dort. Jalen Williams giving him hard help. You're going to force it out of his hands. Now Jalen Williams has to close on McDaniels, and watch this move that McDaniels puts on. Cross, spin, jump stop, a couple pump fakes, and a fadeaway. Is that Jaden McDaniels or Kevin Durant? I mean, he has been absolutely out of this world recently. I couldn't believe this move. I mean, the game was basically in hand, but this really put it away. Shout out Jaden McDaniels. Shout out the Minnesota Timberwolves. They gave OKC real trouble last night, and they're missing 4 key players again. Now, I mean, this maybe begs the question, are those 4 key players really as key as we think? Because, I mean, this lineup is working, man. All these defenders, these small guys, and this length and athleticism really gave OKC trouble. They're one of the only teams in the league that can somewhat match OKC's athleticism and physicality combo, and I thought Minnesota played a really good game last night. Obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had a rough one. We can't take away everything from just one game. I mean, Shai is going to shoot better than that on most nights, but you got to give credit to Minnesota. They got to feel good about themselves going into this All-Star break. They've been on a little bit of a roll, so shout out to them. With that said, guys, I do hope you enjoyed the breakdown. Please leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. Thank you.